Alright, so new tools in action, and I do wish you could have heard the satisfying crack as this Gedore T-handle broke the set screw free. It's not going to replicate it there. This one I haven't taken free just yet. You ready? I'll shut up and maybe we'll hear it. Oh, so satisfying. Unless, of course, you break the end off of your hex driver. Not the case here with this one. That's why we went ahead and waited a few days to get these in. And now we can simply run them out. We're taking these off again so we can put the case on, put the belt on. I might make sure this functions before I come in and like start sanding on it. But I do think when we paint this saw, I'll go ahead and I just picked up a little 3-inch sander. I'm hoping it'll kind of make quick work of this for me. Just knock off the gloss, right? And maybe make the paint adhere a little bit better. But should be the last time that you're seeing it in this configuration. We're not going to do a great job. There's a lot of hardware and stuff that we need to come off. We probably create leaks and all kinds of crud. But just want to get those pulleys off and then come in, prep it, and slap some paint on, essentially. So here's one final look at her, and we'll see and have it all kind of in a somewhat questionable blue. Alright, so not sure where we left off on this. There was a night or two where the camera was dead or not with me, and I kind of wanted to make a little progress. But it's important to note on these pulleys, when you set them down, maintain the set screws, but you can always distinguish which one goes where, A, by the size, but B, your motor shaft is going to be keyed, whereas the drive pulley will not, evidenced there. You can note right here, we've got the little set screw grub so we don't lose her. Coming in over here, though, we started taping things off. You didn't really miss much there. Where I came in and I was thinking like, hey, you know, this is going to paint fairly well. I didn't want to have to take it apart from the stand, and that's why I bought those. Well, if you haven't seen that video, I bought these like Glarks bolt covers. Not for decorative reasons, just strictly so I can just throw paint over this. And they don't really fit that well, despite alleging that they would, so that's a bit of a buzzkill. Coming in, the other things I think I've done, aside from taping off, as I was taking out these little clips here, which, man, this one really pinched the wire. I can feel that sort of right down there's the motor lead, right, to the switch. On the switch, I went ahead, I ran out these long Phillips screws, and there's just 2 of them, because again, I was thinking like, man, I'm going to have to paint that. It's going to look terrible, or mask it off. That would have been difficult to mask, and it wouldn't have looked good. So basically, the way this is set up, this is dropped down just like it would be if it was installed. There's that screw. And what you want to pay attention to is all the connections. So right there, you've got a ground and a ground. Green is going to be our ground. We're going to come in, and you can see here, this bottom ground traces down, and it's going to go into your power extension cord. Out of the power extension cord, you have a black lead that comes into this top prong on the outboard side, and then you've got your white lead that's going to come in and be on the inboard side of this switch. So oriented like it would be installed. All of your power cord connections are going to be at the top of the switch, and then ironically as the bottom ground. The leads going then to the motor are going to be the ground on the top. Note the star washer that'll dig into the paint, hopefully. And then white is right below, black is right below black on the other side. So fairly simple configuration. And then coming to the back, we've taken out all of our, vise and clamp stuff. I also have this out. That is sort of like your tension rod. It wasn't really tricky to get out, but you've got like masked hardware, like that bolt right there. You can see it. It lines up with this. It's obviously obstructed by the handle. So what happens when you go in the full vertical position there, you're actually able to get the spring off. I'm not sure if I'm going to take that spring out of that arm or if we're just going to leave it. The scale is very important to not paint. Nothing wants to stick to this either. That's something to make note of. Again, bolt caps here is the plan. I guess I'll play around and find a deal, and we'll just pull off this handle a little bit. That's already down to the cast iron. That's nothing I did, so that's interesting. Makes me feel less bad about what we're about to do. But I'm gonna go ahead and just like get that motor lead out, get the switch. We could probably leave the rest of the wiring depending on what we do with the motor. Coming into the saw though, this backside, like this is a cord gripper type of a deal, but we've got this hinged cover, and once again, right on time, we've gotten texts. So anyway, that aside, again, I was gonna try to mask and do a bolt cover. Still not 100% sure. Same with these rollouts. My main hesitancy there is I don't really want all that crud in the bearings. I know they'd be, assuming I can match the size, easy to replace, but this I was just simply going to come in and put the caps on. You know, what happens type of a deal. So I'm going to continue disassembly on this thing just a little bit more maybe, and we shall see how it turns out. I'll try to keep you updated. But again, the main thing I wanted to highlight here was the power switch. If you just remember, oriented up just like it came off, down, off, up, on. Your extension cord is the top, your power cord is the bottom, and your white will be inboard, the black is outboard. It's about as simple as I can explain that one. So anyway, I'm gonna get back to work and we'll see how we do. If the roller guides look a little bit more complex to you right now, it's because this happens. And as you can see, the slot is free. So there's a giant set screw here. Basically, you can only go down so far. You know, picture this not necessarily in this configuration, but horizontal. You would then adjust to this position, right? And you could get that much more, I mean, that's a good 2 inches or so there travel, which is great, you know, if you're cutting small stuff like, you know, tiny angle or something. But it would come right off and be freed completely if it wasn't for the red blade guard, which again, nice safety feature. But it looks like we've got a little Phillips there and a little Phillips here, and maybe one hidden somewhere. So I'm thinking that might be the way to go. And then that just comes out as a unit and we don't actually have to change. Not that the factory settings would be correct, but if I'm thinking correctly, just looking at this in, you know, 40 seconds, I want to say this whole thing will come out as an assembly and I don't have to do anything with that bolt. So we'll see. I'll grab the handy dandy Vise and we'll see what she does. Alright, so by just removing that tiny Phillips and flat right there off of the bearing side of this extension, we're able to free the blade. This screwed and never left. Important to note, it was set down all the way. The gap is coming out. If that makes any sense to you, you can kind of see the same thing here, if you can see where the washer embedded itself. So what we'll do now, I guess, is trying to figure out the best way to get this one out of the place, because again, we want to be able to, you know, do a decent job of painting that. However, there's just a little bit of housing there, but I guess we'll try to make it right. So I'll go ahead and figure out how we're going to remove this one. Alright, just in an attempt to walk you through this, this is mainly here to hold that because it's super awkward, because of course it was twisting the blade. But the threads that you can see right there correspond with that bolt. It was super tight, 17mm socket's what you'll need. And then this will slide up again, same adjustment as the other side, just through this channel, of course, and you'll tighten it down. Now, the reason it's not off is, I'm assuming if we take these two screws out, we can release this guard somehow. I haven't looked at the other side yet, which I guess I should have done that before we hit record, but once we do that, we can get it up and out of the way, and then boom. That's why, literally just to paint that little surface there. So anyway, I'll figure this out, and it's either like I said or I'll update you. Alright, so there it is. I will tell you right now, not only was that bolt extremely tight, that's why I had to bust out the Azette. I could have probably done it with a wrench, but I also would have probably A, busted my knuckles into the motor, or B, turned the saw over. And socket and ratchet just seem like a better choice than those two options. Same thing on that stupid deal there. If you note, we've got a new friend here, the Azette bit ratchet. That's a bit of Thinks. Is it a Philo or a Witte? Because it stripped that sucker, and luckily I was able to salvage it with the Vise. The Vise was able to get the other one out, but You're going to want to have that seated because they are just insanely tight, but it's exactly like I thought. Those come off, frees itself from around the blade, and yeah, we are done with that. I guess now we have this little thing left, which I'm wondering if that's what hits the switch, actually. So you'll want to pay attention to the position, although you can tweak it. But you can see right there, it's sort of got more down, evidenced by the fact that we have this exposed, the oval slot. You can tweak it as you go. Again, more text messages. But right here, we've got this hinge cover. And I haven't really gotten a look at this. I think I need to spin it down, but it looks like there's a hinge here, a hinge here. This is actually, I guess, tacked to the backside cover plate. And then if we coalesce down, we've got this set screw, which I assume would fasten it. And then I'm thinking the other connections, man, there's just not much space here. It would be here. I guess, man, just that one in the middle, if you can see that at all. I'm not able to step there. I'm out of space in this shop. But yeah, I think there's some crap I've got to go attend to, and so I'm interrupted yet again. But I'll eventually get back on this, and we might just go ahead and take the back off. So I'll keep you posted as we progress. Alright, so left these 4 screws in, the hinges that are in spot welded to the back panel. What is out is, where did I set that? Get interrupted and lose track. Took the screw out of this, right? And in theory, in this vertical position, if we had to change the blade or something along those lines, this cover should just come off. And you can see it's wanting to open up and hinge just like a door, as it should. And that would give us access to detension the blade, pull it off, put a new one on. Well, it's not happening. And as you can see, it wants to happen. You know, it's going along good there. The issue is right here. Okay, we've got a ton of interference. You can see where it's taking the paint off of this arm right there. And obviously I can bend this and force it out. I can, of course, clearance it, you know, when it's off. But I think what we'll do in the meantime is just take out screw 1, 2, 3, and 4. And that'll allow me to just lift this cover up, and then we can play around with it then, you know, in terms of what we have to clearance off, because this should be, I mean, imagining that you change the blades frequently, or even infrequently, every X cuts over Y time span, you don't want to deal with this. This should open up. It's not because of interference there. There's no spring tension, which would actually hold it back. And if you come in and you hold the motor up, this is the end of the travel, right? This is full on 90 degrees, and it does not tip anymore that way to give us the clearance we need. So you can either grind on that arm, or you can trim the case. It's probably easier to trim the, you know, little backing plate. So I guess that's what we will do after we take it off. Alright, got the extracurricular stuff done. I'm trying to rush through this mainly just because this is a day with light wind, which is super rare here. And I'm wanting to sand outside, and I'm running out of time. So, those 2 screws there, one of them with the safety pin lock is going to go right there on the back side. Again, cutting side here, back side there, it's going to go there. Other one goes here. This is obviously the lead running into the motor. And what we've got over here, the reason you can't just pass it through, you've kind of got like your junction box, right? So, luckily it's just a little cheap cord grabber. We can thread this off, and we should be able to then slide that forward and over the leads, maybe. I'm not quite sure, but you can kind of see what I'm going for there. And so if I can get that out, it looks like there might be a set screw or something weird in it. Really hard to do this one-handed. Come on, man. Get out of there. Okay. Yeah, I guess that's... trying to see. I've not seen, I don't usually deal in plastic ones, but I'm going to play with this with 2 hands not bent over, and we will see if we can't get this cord out of the way. So I think what I'll do then, I'm not quite sure what's going on here, but I know I can back this out. When you hold that motor up, it'll turn free, and then I think I can just take the motor out with the power cord. So that's what I'll be going for. I'll let you know how it works. Alright, it's oddly enough exactly what I thought it was. I even had a slotted screw from prying terminals off earlier. So you take the set screw out. I started by pulling the ground out. I figured that would be the smallest terminal. I wasn't actually sure these would fit, but spoiler alert, they did. So now this is free. We'll actually need to slide the junction box off this way, and once we do that, this whole cord will pull through. We'll just leave that grommet on the other side with the steel plate and that safety pin, and then we can get the motor off. And honestly, at this point, we've dismantled this thing so far, it's very tempting just to release the tension, pull the blade, and maybe take it off of the stand, as dumb as that may seem. So I'm also seriously wondering about like just painting it and then just kind of wire wheeling off, you know, like our deck surfaces. But it's really hard. I don't know if there's a different tape like that would work better. I wiped it down, I waited a while, I heated it. It just does not want to hit and seal to those machine surfaces. But anyway, I'm going to get that pulled out and we'll see where we're at next. And just like that, the motor, the power cord are all gone. Mysterious white substance discovered on the power cord to the motor. So, yeah, this should be significantly easier to move around. The only awkward thing right now is, of course, the blade, because without those guides kind of twisting it to a straight cut, it's cantered in really significantly. If you tweak it, you can set it down and it'll kind of rest okay. But yeah, it is done with simple hand tools. You too can dismantle a $300 piece of equipment. But right there, that funky thing with the Phillips screw is your top bolt. Again, best way to remember how the motor goes, the shaft has to face up. Otherwise, you're going to have serious reassembly issues. Right there, we've got everything. I threw all the spare parts and stuff into the junction box. The switch side, you don't really even have to dismantle anything, right? I wanted to highlight here, there's the white mysterious substance. I don't know what it is, but it's powdery. And, right here, though, man, those two creases, let me zoom in and kind of reset it for you. That's where it was like being held, in my opinion, a little too tight by that factory hold down. But yeah, we have this thing like, boom, full access here. Lots of oil and stuff anytime we take stuff apart. I also think the gearbox leaks based on what you can kind of see there, obviously on my finger, which I guess we're going to change the oil anyway. But I'm kind of thinking if I can get those stupid caps that don't really fit well on, I could wire brush that. I don't know if I just want to go ahead and dismantle the whole thing. This is not recommended one-handed. And actually, I don't know how far back this will go because the motor's not there. Full on vertical. Okay, cool. So it's a little wonky, but I guess less shaky because the motor's not there. This is the factory blade that they have installed. So to tension it, adjust the tension, it'd be this knob. If we loosen it, decrease the tension, we can actually take that blade out. Now, going this far, do we just take the stupid pulleys off becomes the next question. I kind of don't care. Like, we could. It looks like it'd be a little hex screw. Based on everything else, it would be insanely tight, and we'd probably strip it out. But I don't really care to paint the inside of it. Like, it's fine to me, but just any visible surface I wanted to hit right and make it blue. So I think that's what we'll do. I guess we just as well, you'll want to note there's like a couple of holes here. This thing is in the bottom one, but I guess we might go ahead and get that off. Might leave it, but yeah, it's basically dismantled. Obviously we need to trim this a little. Still haven't taken the handle off. That's something we'll do, and I guess I'll peel these ground stickers off. I do want to give them credit, whether that was the star or they sanded it. I'll assume it was the star. They did actually have a clean ground for both the motor and the plug-in cord, so that's nice to see. So yeah, there she is. I think it's time for me to get the air compressor fired up, see what the little Baxter can do, and get ready to throw some paint on this thing. So a little overkill, but hey, you know, when you buy something and you're on your own time, you can do it your way. So we'll make that happen and see what goes next. All right, so welcome back. I kind of ran out of daylight last time we were filming on this. Super busy last night, didn't get to do anything. It is pretty windy right now. It's going to be really bad tomorrow and Friday. So This is where I left off. This is blown off, of course, before I brought it back in, but basically just use a little Baxter that we brought in recently. And if you haven't seen that video, well, we have a little Baxter that we brought in for stuff like this. And as I got it in under the light in the shop, I was like, man, I'd like to get a little bit more off of that thing. So the issue here, this is not steel, this is cast iron, right? So what I mean by that is that we've got like porous surfaces. So you could conceivably, have an area that cleans off fine, and then maybe beside it's a crater. And it's gonna be really, really difficult to kind of get like this as cast finish, if you will. So this is what she looks like after our initial run here. I'd raise it up some for you, but I kind of can't due to space constraints. But if I do a little bit, you can kind of see what I'm talking about just on the bed there. I mean, you get a feel for it, just faded, and certain areas, it comes off good, certain areas barely get grazed. Went through a disc and a half, if you're curious, with the Baxter. What I want to do now, I then threw a die grinder on it, and I was out there just getting too dark. Like, I'm seeing sparks, but I can't tell if I'm taking paint off type of a thing. So what I'm going to do is get the compressor fired up, and I think I'm going to hit it with the belt sander, and I'm afraid it's going to chew through the belts. I think I bought a couple of spares, but that was kind of wasn't sure if that was a good quality tool or not. So didn't invest heavily in the consumable side, but I just want to come in like in these sort of hard to reach areas, which I don't know why this didn't take anything off, but I'll hit it again mainly with daylight. I've got like 2 hours or so. It's about 6:20 right now, so I've got a little bit of daylight. I think it's sadly too windy for me to paint, but I would have loved to have done that. I try to avoid painting in here because it makes a mess every time. But anyway, I'm gonna quit rambling, get the compressor on, and just take it from here. So we've like roughed it in, I guess you would call this, and we'll go from there. So here she is, and you'll see how she looks after another round of sanding. Alright, so I always clean stuff up, at least when a job is done. I'd blown this off the previous night. I blew it off tonight. I wasn't happy because it was still red, basically, maroon, pigmented, whatever you want to call it. All we did is we wiped it down with a dry towel, and it took so much of that off. Looks really good. I mean, in person, I think it looked better outside. Now it doesn't look that great, but it looks way better than it did. So always clean up. I also blow these fiber discs out just because, again, less mess in the box. So looks pretty dadgum good though. Could almost pass for new if you didn't give it a close inspection. Alright, so it's a little before about 8:30 actually. No need to be dramatic. It's 8:30. It's getting dark. Bugs are coming out. The wind was pretty bad. But I just decided, I don't get a ton of free time. I just need to go ahead and get this done. So, kind of sanded it down quite a bit. I spent the vast majority of that time doing that. And then we did this. So, she's blue. The entire thing is blue. The paint dried beautifully. Again, it was in addition to the wind. I mean, right now it's 68. I was about 75-ish when I got started. So, need to knock some more of the red off of her, just the sanding debris, especially on the base. That's why it sort of has like that funky look to it. That's literally what that is. So we'll wipe it down. Not too shabby, really. I went ahead, there's some stuff I didn't mask off. I just kind of held cardboard, like this little landing spot here. That is not masked at all. I just figured I'd grind that off. This we kept relatively clean. I went ahead and sprayed some of the bolts, didn't really care. Obviously we guarded the motor shaft, stuff like that. The pulleys on the backside. But now this is like a terrible angle. Again, there's a tailgate above it. And I've got stuff there I'm working on. Kind of using that as a workbench right now, actually. But yeah, I mean, you get a good feel for it. Obviously, haven't pulled the masking tape. Really came out really nice. I tried to go a little heavy in part. Again, it's cast iron, so there's porous areas, right? And to me, it just seems like you kind of want that glossy, hard, durable look to it. And yeah, I don't think I'm quite done. I'm not going to tell you what I have in mind, but we'll probably start reassembly, maybe even you know, fire it up, do some test cuts, which we probably should have done before we took it down this far. But I'm really happy with how it turned out. Obviously, right here, that knob, I could have done a little better. I can obviously shoot that in here, but I kind of think I'm going to brush that. And what I mean is shoot spray paint in the lid and brush it. Here, I decided to just go ahead and do that, and again, I can kind of knock it off. It'll probably come off, you know, with mineral spirits or something, but I really am. I think it turned out pretty good. I mean, again, I brought you in here just because, again, the light outside just wouldn't really show much, so yeah. I mean, take a little time, and honestly, I'm not sure, being cast iron, if you just really want to do like a quick job, I don't know that you'd have to knock anything off. It's advisable, but unless you like chemically strip this thing, blast it completely, I mean like dismantle it 100%, you're never going to get like a perfect job. So for what it is, we kind of did like a hybrid, and I think she turned out pretty good. Like I said, I've got some other tricks up my sleeve here, so it's not necessarily the finished product, and obviously it's got to be reassembled. But on that front, I've not eaten, and I think I'm going to run in and do that, maybe put some air in tires since I've got the compressor with some pressure in it right now. But yeah, pretty happy with it, so we'll see how it looks tomorrow if I change my mind, and we'll catch you back for reassembly, basically. Also, I did take that handle off. It was a 10mm bolt. It's a keyed shaft. You can see we kept that, again, really clean. And aside from the bolts, I just decided to paint them. You know, I'm like not trying to show them off or anything, so they blend in pretty good this way. But we did take the handle off. We'll probably leave it black. So anyway, like I said, pretty happy so far, and I'll keep you posted as we progress.